So today, we're going to dive into a book that really shifted the whole conversation around American history. It's called The Negro in Our History, written back in 1922 by Carter G. Woodson. His whole goal was to bring a story to light that had been pretty much completely ignored. And to do it, he starts in a place you would never expect. Let's get into it. See, Woodson wasn't just writing a history of Black people. He was writing a history of the United States as it was influenced by them. Now, that might sound like a small change in wording, but believe me, it's a huge deal. He wanted to show that this presence wasn't just a footnote, it was woven into the very DNA of the country. But here's what's so wild about his approach. To really understand that influence, Woodson says we can't just start with the first slave ships arriving in America. No way. He insists we have to go way, way back to understand the world that these people came from, a world that had its own incredible history. And that's where our journey really begins, in Africa. Woodson paints this incredible picture of a continent that's not just one big place, but a land of incredible diversity, with civilizations shaped by their unique environments long before any Europeans arrived. So, think of it like this. In the really lush, green parts near the equator, food was everywhere, so life was different. Then you had the drier areas, where people had to get creative, and that's where you see agriculture really take off. And in the savanna, it was all about herding cattle. For these early societies, their entire way of life was shaped by the land around them. And this idea that these were somehow primitive societies, absolutely not. Many had these really complex, sophisticated governments. I mean, look at this image of an African king and his council. Whitson points out that they often had this clever mix of a monarchy with democratic checks and balances. Really advanced stuff. Okay, so you've got these really smart governments, and that's the launch pad for what comes next. Woodson just demolishes the myth of an undeveloped continent by walking us through these great empires, each one leaving this amazing legacy of culture and innovation. And this is just a quick snapshot. We're talking about massive, powerful states that were around for hundreds of years. I mean, look at the Kingdom of Songhai. That's over 6 centuries of history right there. And the key thing to remember is they weren't just sitting in isolation. They were bustling centers of trade, connected to the rest of the world, constantly sharing wealth and new ideas. And check out what they were accomplishing. We're talking advanced armies, complex industries, incredible architecture. And get this is a game changer. Woodson makes it clear that these Africans were the first people to smelt iron. That's a technology that literally reshaped the entire world. But it's not all just buildings and technology, right? Woodson really drives home that there was this incredibly deep intellectual tradition. And you can see it captured perfectly in their proverbs, which kind of give you a window into the soul of their societies. I mean, listen to this. The lack of knowledge is darker than night. That tells you everything. This was a culture that valued wisdom, that saw ignorance as something to be feared, like a deep darkness. And then there's this one. And wow, is it hauntingly prophetic? An ignorant man is a slave. The idea that knowledge is freedom and ignorance is a kind of prison, well, that idea was about to become terrifyingly real. Okay, so now the story takes a really dark turn because new forces start showing up on the coast of Africa, and they're not there for cultural exchange. They're there for people, and they kickstart a business that will tear this entire world apart. Now, Woodson is super clear about something important here. Yes, a form of slavery already existed in Africa, like it did in a lot of the ancient world, but it was usually about prisoners of war, and it was often more like serfdom. The transatlantic trade was something totally different. This was a brutal commercial machine designed to get cheap labor, period. And this says it all, doesn't it? On the left, you see that self-governance, a king and his council, and on the right, a marketplace for human beings. The slave trade created a massive incentive for war, turning people into products and entire regions into hunting grounds. Yeah, this wasn't just happening by chance. It was a business, a horrifyingly efficient global machine that connected Europe, Africa, and the Americas in a terrible cycle of profit and pain. It's called the triangular trade, and you can see why. It was this vicious, profitable loop. Ships would bring goods to Africa, trade them for human beings, sail those people to the West Indies to be sold, and then take the profits from that sale to buy products like molasses to bring back home. Every single leg of the journey made someone rich, which just fueled the demand for more enslaved people. So, we've talked about the business side. Now we have to talk about the human cost, the journey itself, The trip across the Atlantic, known as the Middle Passage, it was just a system of pure, calculated cruelty. It was all about moving human cargo as cheaply as possible, and the death toll was just part of the cost of doing business. 50 million. Let that number sink in for a second. According to Woodson's sources, that's how many people Africa lost. And that's not just the people who made it onto the ships. That includes the millions who died in the wars to capture them, the millions who died on the forced marches to the coast, and the millions who died in the filth and disease of the ships themselves. And the dehumanization, it was a cold, calculated process. Just look at this. People were treated like animals, inspected and judged purely on their physical ability to work. They weren't people anymore. They were potential profit margins. And then the brand. This was the final, brutal step in turning a person into property. A permanent scar to signify ownership, designed to burn away their old identity and force them into submission. For those who actually survived that horrific journey, the nightmare wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The first stop for most wasn't even North America. It was the sugar plantations of the West Indies, a place that served as a horrifying orientation to their new life. They had a name for it, breaking in. And the name itself just tells you everything you need to know. It was a systematic process of torture, overwork, and terror. The goal was simple: crush their spirit, erase their culture, and destroy any will to resist. And this was their life. Endless, brutal work, often with nothing but a simple hoe, in conditions so bad that the death rate was off the charts. But here's something that'll stop you in your tracks. The original caption for this very illustration was, "The Faithful Slave." The difference between that rosy title and the hellish reality Woodson describes, it's just staggering. And this is what it all comes down to. This is the question Woodson leaves us with. When you know about the empires, the philosophy, the art, the technology that came before, the story of slavery isn't just a beginning. It becomes the story of a civilization that was violently interrupted, of a world that was lost. And when you see it that way, well, it changes everything.